The Kyle Rittenhouse acquittal has unleashed some epically bad takes on Twitter.
These are a few of them.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie. And for those of you who have been living under a rock, in a cave, with no internet connections or neighbors for the next 5 miles around you, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial has come to an end. Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted on all charges against him, and this has unleashed some of the most epically bad takes on Twitter. Some are born out of ignorance, some are born out of malice, and others are born out of all three. And we're going to go over just some of those epically bad takes on Twitter. For those of you who may not have been watching about 8 hours of live streaming of the trial and commentary a day, and for those of you who may have missed the moment, this is the moment when Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted.
As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty.
For anybody who has been following this story, if not from day one of the event in August 2020, at the very least from day one of the trial, there is a certain amount of red pilling that is going on with a massive amount of the population, because anybody who watched that trial now thoroughly understands and genuinely appreciates that the media lies on a daily basis. There were so many lies in the context of this incident from day one to the last day of trial. I don't know where to start, except to start with the idea that this was a white supremacist active shooter who had shot black men at a BLM protest. In fact, Kyle Rittenhouse himself seems to be mixed race of Latino descent, and the three individuals he shot that night were all white and all had lengthy criminal histories. We're going to get to that by the end of this vlog, but that was lie one that the general population was told as relates to the events of that night. Another one of the epic lies that was told in the context of this incident is that it was illegal for Kyle Rittenhouse to possess the firearm in question. That turned out to be so false that the judge dismissed that charge at the end of the trial. And the third lie, heard round the world day in and day out incessantly for months, is that Kyle Rittenhouse crossed state lines to go and use his firearm at this protest.
You know, you've got this young white kid.
When he drove across state lines to Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Approximately 1 mile to Wisconsin.
Across state lines. He's driving across state lines.
Across the state line.
Across state lines.
Across state lines.
Came across state lines.
Kyle Rittenhouse, who traveled across state lines.
Out of his own state. Came across state borders.
The full-length version of that supercut, because I only showed a few seconds of it, it goes on and on and on, and it is worth a watch. You can see that on Matt Orfalia's YouTube channel, and it comes from Matt Taibbi's Substack, and you can find those links in the pinned comment below. But day in and day out, we were told that Kyle Rittenhouse crossed state lines with an illegal firearm. He went to this BLM protest looking to hurt people, and that is exactly what happened. Therefore, he is guilty, and it was all
A big fat lie.
And it's a big fat lie that people told back in August 2020. They told it for about 14 months. And even after trial, even after all the evidence came out for the entire world to see, even after the acquittal came down, people are still repeating those awful lies. After the verdict, Twitter was inundated with cognitive dissonance because you had people out there who had heard lies for 14 months straight and simply can't understand and cannot digest the outcome of this trial, which, in my humble opinion, was pure justice.
After 14 months of pure injustice.
And after the verdict came down, I was going through Twitter and I said, I have to highlight some of these bad takes, and I want to specify that I am punching up here. I am not punching down, because there are a lot of people out there who only get their information from people they follow on Twitter, but the people they follow on Twitter know better, ought to know better, and know that they are lying, and they do not care that they are abusing of the ignorance of their followers. This is a genuine red pill moment for a lot of people out there, and we have to welcome them with open arms and not mock them for the fact that they have been exploited for 14 months. But we can certainly go after the purveyors of fake information, and I'm going to start with
Bill de Blasio.
Mayor Bill de Blasio at NYC Mayor. Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum are victims. They should be alive today. The only reason they're not is because a violent, dangerous man chose to take a gun across state lines and start shooting people. To call this a miscarriage of justice is an understatement.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
There are so many things wrong with this one tweet that it actually takes skill to pack so much misinformation into so few characters. Starting with the most obvious, Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum are literally not victims. They were literally not victims because the court came to the conclusion that Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense and that they were in fact therefore the victimizers,
not the victims.
Not only were Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum in fact not victims despite the misinformation that the mayor of New York is putting out on Twitter for the entire world to see, they were in fact repeat offender criminals. That is not to say that because of their criminal history, they are therefore fair game for vigilante justice, full stop. And their criminal history was in fact not brought before the jury in the context of this trial, but that is just to say, potentially, to explain away some of their erratic and violent behavior that evening. For anybody who was watching the trial, they would truly appreciate that the violent, dangerous man was not Kyle Rittenhouse. It was in fact these two career criminals who were violent, dangerous, pursued Kyle Rittenhouse, and caused him to have to use lethal self-defense.
And that is why he was acquitted.
But above and beyond all of that, Bill de Blasio goes out and repeats yet again another lie of having crossed state lines. Once anyone appreciates the proximity of certain states to one another and that you can literally live in a community 1 mile away from another state, you will fully appreciate how you have been lied to from day one, and especially given the fact that crossing state lines in and of itself is not illegal whatsoever. For anyone who paid the slightest bit of attention to the trial, you would appreciate that this was not a case of bussing in people from other states to wreak havoc. This was literally a community kid who was protecting minority-owned businesses, was violently pursued by career criminals, and had to use lethal self-defense in order to save his own life. And yet, despite all of that, there are literally people on Twitter claiming that this is somehow the embodiment of white supremacy. Which brings us to our next epically bad take of this situation, which ironically comes to you from the ACLU of Maryland. And for those of you who may not know what the ACLU stands for, if only in their acronym, it stands for the American Civil Liberties Union. Dangerous, disgusting, unacceptable white supremacy in hashtag Rittenhouse verdict. There are literally people out there, and a lot of them, who actually believe that Kyle Rittenhouse shot 3 black men that evening, and it might be as a result of their ignorance, but I don't blame them. I blame people who exploit their ignorance, and I blame the ACLU of Maryland. A mixed-race individual shoots 3 white people, all violent criminals as well, if that changed anything, in self-defense, and you claim, quote, white supremacy, end quote. Infinite and incorrigible stupidity, courtesy of the ACLU_MD. But then I noticed a tweet from someone who I do in fact follow, Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP in Canada, the New Democratic Party, and I believe that Jagmeet Singh does in fact know better, but Jagmeet Singh thrives off dividing Canadians against Canadians. For those of you who don't know, Jagmeet Singh was the guy who equated not wanting to wear a mask to right-wing extremism, selfishness, people who don't care about community, and then lo and behold, a few days after categorizing people as selfish if they don't want to wear a mask, he was caught not wearing a mask, breaking the COVID rules himself. You can't make this stuff up, and you could, but no one would believe you. And this is the gem coming out of the Twitter feed of the Jagmeet Singh. I know today's verdict is painful for many. It feels like another failure by a broken system designed to protect some and hurt others. For those that carry such grief and must continue to witness denials of justice, my heart is with you. I read this all-star gem of divisive stupidity and I said I just have to respond, and I think I may have lost my temper a little bit. You are a shameless idiot, and I guarantee you that you didn't watch 10 minutes of the trial, you divisive nincompoop. I think that's about as mean as I get on Twitter, but
Sorry for losing my temper there, eh?
And while some people deserve endless mockery for their shameless stupidity, others do deserve a little bit of understanding because I do think they have good intentions. I just don't think they're paying that much attention. David Hogg, the family of those killed deserve justice, and even that has now been taken away from them too. My thoughts are with them. To which I responded as follows. I understand your life experience and it is good to feel empathy, but Rosenbaum was a convicted Huber a violent individual, and both were stalking Kyle Rittenhouse with the specific intent to kill him. It was pure self-defense. That is why the jury acquitted. Which brings us into the violent criminal histories of the 3 white men who were shot that night. Now, if there are still people out there who actually wrongly think that the individuals who were shot were black, they certainly know nothing of their criminal history, and their criminal history is terrible. From Wisconsin right now, why we've decided to tell you the criminal records of the men shot in Kenosha. Newly released documents obtained by Wisconsin right now from the Pima County, Arizona Clerk of Courts confirm Rosenbaum was charged by a grand jury with 11 counts of child molestation and inappropriate sexual activity with children, including, and I'm not reading it. The victims were 5 boys ranging in age from 9 to 11 years old. He was convicted of 2 amended counts as part of a plea deal. See those documents here. And then Anthony Huber, the man who struck Kyle Rittenhouse in the head with a skateboard twice. Every image you see of him in mainstream media makes him look angelic, almost religious, and it always turned my stomach. This is his history. Huber had a disorderly conduct conviction from 2018 as a domestic abuse repeater, which is a misdemeanor. He also had a case from 2012 with these charges, and I'll only draw your attention to strangulation and suffocation felony, false imprisonment felony. And then we get to Grosskreutz, the man who was shot in the bicep step after pointing a loaded Glock at Kyle Rittenhouse. A Glock, by the way, that he did not have a permit for a concealed carry, presumably because his permit was revoked, notwithstanding the false testimony that Binger, the prosecution, induced the witness to give. Grosskreuz's arrest history from the State Department of Justice is lengthy. There are multiple dismissed cases, including an expungement, a felony that was expunged. In January 2021, he was accused of second offense drunk driving. Prosecutors moved for the case to be dismissed after a hearing, and it was. Gage Paul Grosskreutz has a forfeiture case for not showing obedience to officers, as well as one for loud noises. He was convicted of a criminal misdemeanor in 2016 for going armed with a firearm while intoxicated. Now, as I said before in this vlog, none of the evidence of the criminal histories of the 3 white men who were shot by Kyle Rittenhouse that evening was adduced as evidence before the jury, although they did hear some evidence as to how Rosenbaum was released from a hospital the day he was shot, and that hospital happened to be a psychiatric hospital. The evidence of the criminal histories of the men who were shot that night was not made as evidence before the jury, so they may or may not have known about it. One thing is for certain, for the last 14 months,
The media has known about it.
the media has known about the violent criminal histories of the 3 men that were shot that night, and instead of talking about that, instead of informing the general public to potentially explain away how it was that these 3 violent criminals pursued Kyle Rittenhouse with the intent to kill him, instead of explaining that, they paint this as an issue of white supremacy. A white boy crosses state lines with an unlawful firearm, all of which is false, in order to wreak havoc at a BLM protest. You are being lied to, I am being lied to, we are all being lied to by the mainstream media, and anybody who was following this trial now has taken a very thorough and jagged red pill, but I've got to say, welcome to the party, pal! And just to pull up a Saki and circle back to the question of misinformation, you are going to see a lot of blue check marks on social media repeating demonstrably false misinformation, and you do have something known as defamation in the United States, although the bar is extremely high, especially as relates to public figures, but you do still nonetheless have law on defamation. And when you take to social media to publish demonstrably false misinformation that could in fact harm someone's reputation, you do open that door to a lawsuit in defamation, and I let Bill de Blasio know as much. At the Viva Frei, given that it is now a judicial fact that Rosenbaum and Huber were not victims, but the Kyle Rittenhouse was, this tweet is objectively defamatory and proves that at NYC mayor is a liar and unfit for office. So that is it. Those are what I feel to be the worst takes of the Rittenhouse acquittal I have seen on social media. There are tons of other bad takes out there, but they are variations on this particular theme. But there are a lot of people out there who have now been thoroughly red-pilled by the lies they now know the media is telling them, and we need to embrace them with open arms and not mock them for having been duped for so long. And with that said, because there's a leaf blower that is getting closer and closer to the car, so we better end this. If you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the channel, all of these support links are in the pinned comment. Robert Barnes and I do weekly streams every Sunday. We do weekly streams with a guest every Wednesday called The Sidebar. You can also find us and support us on Locals, where supporters get lots of exclusive content.
VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com.
You can also catch all of my content on Rumble, but more important than anything, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!